After thousands of hours on the meditation cushion, practitioners consistently report a distinct perceptual shift. The sensation of a solid, continuous body dissolves into a fluid wave of vibrating energetic points. Traditional Buddhist texts have described this state for millennia. Today, cognitive science converges on a precise mathematical model that explains the mechanics of this transition. It is called the Active Inference Framework. Developed by neuroscientist Carl Friston, it provides a neurocomputational bridge between ancient contemplative practices and modern biology. This diagram shows the brain acting as a prediction engine. It compresses complex granular sensory data into simplified abstract concepts. Advanced meditation reverses this compression by adjusting precision weighting. Shifting these dials reduces reliance on concepts, increasing the resolution of raw sensory input. We can analyze the specifics of this process by looking at two specific algorithmic techniques, Mahasi-style noting and Goenka-style body scanning. Vipassana functions as a deliberate, systematic dismantling of the brain's reality-generating algorithms. To understand the dismantling process, we must first establish how the brain constructs reality. The brain is sealed inside a dark skull. It has no direct access to the outside world, so it must guess what is causing the electrical signals hitting its sensory organs. It organizes these guesses using a structure called a hierarchical generative model. At the very bottom of this hierarchy is raw, unfiltered sensory data. Moving up the hierarchy, the models become more abstract and stable. The brain clusters raw sensations into objects, objects into environments, and at the very top it maintains the most complex belief of all, the concept of a persistent self. Information moves in two directions. Abstract predictions flow down from the top, telling the lower levels what to expect. Meanwhile, sensory data flows up from the bottom, testing those predictions against reality. This system operates on a biological imperative to minimize variational free energy, an information-theoretic measure of uncertainty. In practical terms, variational free energy is prediction error. If the top-down expectation clashes with the bottom-up sensory data, the error spikes. When the prediction matches the data, the system settles. The process of resolving these prediction errors is called active inference. The brain can either update its internal beliefs to match the world, or it can move the body to change the incoming sensory data. Crucially, the brain must decide which signal to trust, the top-down expectation or the bottom-up data. It manages this using precision weighting, an attentional volume knob that amplifies the signals deemed most reliable. If a system can control how precision weighting is allocated, it fundamentally controls the very structure of the reality it perceives. In a normal, untrained mind, precision weighting is heavily biased toward the top of the hierarchy. The brain places immense trust in its abstract concepts and its model of the self. Because these top-level priors are so heavily weighted, incoming sensory data is forced to fit pre-existing narratives, habitual reactions, and ongoing anxieties. This top-heavy computational state has a distinct neurobiological correlate, the default mode network, or DMN. The DMN is highly active when we are not focused on a specific task. It drives self-referential thinking and frequent mind-wandering and continuous autobiographical memory. Computationally, the DMN functions as the rigid top layer of the generative model. It is the physical engine of the ego, constantly running endlessly in the dark background of our minds. To alter this rigid structure, the Mahasi style of Vipassana meditation targets the precision weighting knob directly. The practice requires a continuous, moment-to-moment mental labeling of physical and mental phenomena as they arise, silently noting words like thinking, hearing, or rising. Using language to deconstruct concepts appears counterintuitive, as language normally reinforces our top-down categories. But in this context, the label acts as a transient verbal cognitive scaffold. By applying a label to a thought or sensation, the meditator isolates a specific high-level prediction. Instead of viewing the thought as an absolute reality, the brain recognizes it as a discrete, observable mental event. Once the brain categorizes the event as a prediction rather than a fact, it drops the precision weighting of that specific prior. The certainty holding the concept together dissolves. Through repetition, this mechanism creates a top-down cascade. One by one, the rigid conceptual blocks are identified and pruned. Mahasi noting systematically dismantles the highest, most abstract layers of the generative model, removing the structural support for the ego. While noting prunes the model from the top down, the Goenka style of body scanning attacks the generative model from the opposite direction. Scanning involves sweeping attention systematically across the body, observing raw sensations without applying any conceptual labels. In the language of active inference, scanning turns the precision volume knob to maximum exclusively on raw, low-level somatosensory signals. This sustained focus floods the lower levels of the hierarchy with hyperspecific, localized data. This creates a computational paradox. The brain becomes entirely absorbed in processing this flood of microsensations. Because attention is fully deployed at the lowest sensory level, the upward flow of prediction errors stops. The higher-level concept of the body, the unified body schema, relies on those prediction errors to maintain its shape. Starved of input, the schema loses its structural integrity. The subjective experience of this computational collapse is known as bhanga, or dissolution. During bhanga, the distinct boundaries of the skin melt away, replaced by the perception of a continuous, wave-like field of subatomic vibrations. Whether triggered by top-down pruning or bottom-up flooding, the mechanical result is defabrication, the collapse of the self-model. This process of defabrication is measurable in the brain. Inside an MRI scanner, we can observe the physical reality of this collapse. Measurable changes occur within the dorsal attention network, or DAN, the brain system responsible for sustained, focused awareness. This chart shows the contrast between long-term meditators and non-meditators. During focused attention tasks, activity in the default mode network drops significantly, while activation in the dorsal attention network rises. In advanced meditators, these two networks become strictly anti-correlated. Sustaining focused presence physically suppresses the neurological networks that generate the ego. If the generative model is flattened and the concept of the self is gone, what is the brain actually predicting? Active inference researchers resolve this using a mechanism called epistemic depth, managed by a hypermodel. In the deepest meditative states, the brain stops trying to predict an external reality or maintain a solid identity. Instead, the hypermodel only tracks its own internal precision weightings, its own uncertainty. The system shifts into a state of pure, non-local reflexive awareness. It tracks its own functioning, moment by moment, without attachment to a specific outcome. It becomes a beautiful loop. This state reveals that human cognition is not a fixed outcome of its own predictions. It demonstrates an inherent capacity to suspend the self-model, allowing for an experience of reality that is no longer filtered through habitual narratives.